It's October 2030, and a student named Maya is sitting in a law firm conference room being offered her third job before she's finished her last semester. She graduated with zero debt. She passed the bar on her first attempt, and the school that made all of that possible was ranked in the low 60s when she enrolled. It was the kind of school that most applicants ignore. Meanwhile, a guy named James, same LSAT score, same GPA, same application year, is carrying $140,000 in debt, working at a firm he never planned to join in a city he never planned to live in. Same starting point, same year, but opposite outcomes. The difference wasn't talent or luck, it was three numbers James never thought to check. Numbers that Maya looked up before she signed anything. My name is Steve Schwartz. I run LSAT Unplugged. And what I'm about to walk you through is a scenario, not a prediction. Think of it as a stress test written from the future. Every force I describe is already in motion right now in 2026. I'm going to show you two fictional law schools, Greystone Law and Westfield Law. And I'm going to walk you through how the same crisis destroyed one school and transformed the other. Maya enrolled at one, James enrolled at the other. And by the end of this talk, you'll know the three numbers that separated them, and you'll be able to look them up for any law school you're considering. We're going to stay in 2030 for most of this video, and I'll tell you when we come back to the present. In 2025, both schools looked healthy. Greystone was private in the Northwest, ranked in the mid-70s. About 170 students per entering class, founded in the 1990s, tuition around $48,000. It had just opened up a new building. $38 million put into it, financed with revenue bonds. The dean was in the press talking about innovation and momentum. Westfield was private in the Southeast, ranked in the low 60s, about 200 students per entering class, around since the 1940s, tuition about $52,000, old building, had the same dean for 12 years, nothing flashy, no press. Both of them riding the application boom. Classes were full. Their scholarship budgets were growing. The deans were giving optimistic speeches. On paper, Greystone Law looked stronger. It had newer facilities, energy, and a story to tell. Westfield looked boring, and I want you to keep that in mind. Their paths diverged in three different places. Each one is a number, and the first one starts with a building. That first number is debt. When a university borrows money, usually by issuing revenue bonds, the loan comes with rules associated. The most important one is your tuition revenue has to stay above a certain level each year or you're in violation. The bank is saying, we're going to lend you $38 million, but if your tuition income drops below a certain number, we have a real problem. In 2025, Greystone was above that level. They had a comfortable margin. Westfield's dean had been approached about new construction multiple times. Donors were interested. The university was willing to back bonds, and every other school in the region was building, so his facilities committee pushed hard. At a board meeting in 2023, the committee presented a $30 million plan with renderings, timelines, financing structure. The dean listened to the entire thing. But when they finished, he asked one question. What happens to the loan payments if we lose 30 students from next year's class? And the room went quiet. Somebody said that just wasn't going to happen. Applications were at record highs. The dean said, applications were at record highs in 2010 also, but we spent the next decade recovering. With those two sentences, $30 million dead on the table. The board was furious. The faculty were embarrassed because they'd already been telling recruits about the new building. A professor told me later that the dean became the least popular person on campus for about 2 years. And nobody was calling him a genius, not yet. Greystone owed $38 million and Westfield owed nothing. So that's the first number, debt. The second number is the discount rate because the crisis hit both of them with three punches. The first was the applicant pool shrinking, fewer college-age Americans, which was a hangover from the birth rates dropping during the Great Recession. Then Congress capped federal graduate lending, and the blank check loan era ended overnight. Then the data went public. Bar passage rates, employment outcomes, every dollar in and out, and applicants could finally see what their tuition was buying. The top 20 schools barely noticed. They had endowments, they had global brands, more applicants than they would ever need. But below that, revenue models were breaking in real time. Greystone's entering class dropped from 170 to 145. To fill even those seats, the school had to offer bigger scholarships. The average tuition discount jumped from 40% to 55% in a single year. Revenue collapsed below $11 million, below the covenant floor, below the requirement. That one number was all it took, and so as a result, they were in big trouble. Westfield lost students too. They went from 200 students to 175. But its dean had been managing the discount rate for years. He knew Westfield couldn't compete for 170 plus LSAT scores against higher ranking schools, so he'd stopped trying. He built the revenue strategy around students from the 158 to 164 range, students who could get modest money at higher ranked schools or significant money at Westfield. When the squeeze came, Westfield didn't have to slash prices to fill seats. Its discount rate went from 42% to 48%. It was a minor bump, was not a total collapse. And that's the second number, the discount rate. How much of its sticker price the school is actually collecting. A school discounting aggressively to fill seats is running out of room, but a school that has been disciplined has a real cushion. Now, here's what this meant for Maya. Westfield's positioning is why she got the offer she got. She got full tuition plus a $5,000 living stipend. So she was getting paid to go to law school. And the school, of course, was not being generous. This was part of its strategy. It wanted students in Maya's LSAT range because they were the students it could recruit without destroying its budget. Maya was their strategy. In contrast, James got a half scholarship at Greystone, and it felt like validation. What he didn't realize was that Greystone was offering him the most it could afford, and it wasn't enough to keep the institution running. Now, the third number we got to keep in mind here is the full pay percentage, and nobody talks about that number. At most law schools outside the top 20, roughly 25 to 30% of the entering class pays close to full tuition. These are often students with lower LSAT scores who don't even qualify for merit scholarships at all. They pay full price, and their tuition dollars fund everybody else's scholarships. And those students are the financial foundation of the institution. Most of them don't even know it. And so when the lending caps hit, those students were the first to disappear. Under the old system, Grad Plus loans covered every dollar. But under the new caps, students needed private lenders to fill the gap. And private lenders looked at schools with weaker employment outcomes and said they were too risky. Greystone lost nearly half of its full pay tuition students in 2 years. And so the revenue hole they created by leaving was catastrophic. Every full pay student who'd left took not just their own tuition, but the scholarship subsidy they were unknowingly funding for somebody else. Westfield's dean had seen the lending caps coming. He restructured the scholarship grid. He reduced full ride offers for high scorers and redirected that money into partial scholarships for mid-range students. More students paying something and fewer were paying nothing, and the full pay cohort shrank by 15% instead of 50%. The school dropped 2 spots in the rankings because its median LSAT dipped by a point. The faculty pushed back and the dean took the hit. And so that's the third number, full pay percentage. What share of the class is paying close to sticker price and how fast it's shrinking. A school can, of course, survive declining enrollment to some extent, and it can survive discounting to some extent. But the school cannot survive losing the students who fund everyone else. So the debt, the discount rate, and the full pay percentage, those are the 3 numbers we got to look at. And I'm going to show you exactly where to find them right now. But first, I've got to finish this story because what happened next is the part that matters most if you're choosing a law school this year. Greystone crossed their covenant line, their threshold, in 2027. After that, the institution didn't just decline, it cannibalized itself. The university had to freeze hiring, cut adjunct positions, and reduce course sections. The clinical programs were eliminated first because they were the most expensive to run. The problem was, they were the hands-on work that the new bar exam tested and that employers valued most. And so James felt the impact before he even understood it. His 2L fall, two professors left. One retired early, and one took a job at a better resourced school. Neither of them was replaced. A seminar James had planned to schedule around was canceled 3 weeks before the semester started. By the spring, Career Services had lost a staff member. The remaining counselor was handling 3 times the course load. James went to her office in February to talk about summer placement, and she was helpful but honest, saying, "We're just doing the best we can." She was just too stretched thin. And so the school had to spend more on marketing with enrollment consultants, a new website, glossy mailers, trying to attract students it could enroll by discounting harder, which made the revenue problem worse. Every dollar spent recruiting was a dollar not spent on the students already there. Weaker programs, of course, produced worse outcomes. Worse outcomes scared applicants. Fewer applicants meant bigger discounts, and so the spiral spun faster. James started hearing rumors in his 2L spring. The faculty were talking, and students were talking too. The phrase strategic review showed up in a university press release, and he didn't even know what that meant yet. And then the AI and law clinic listed on the website when James had applied, the one he was planning to take as a 2L, was cut. The same semester, Maya walked into her AI law clinic. At Westfield, the pressure was real, but it was pushing the school in the opposite direction. The school had to fill seats. To fill seats in a shrinking market, it had to offer bigger scholarships. Less revenue per student meant the school could not afford to lose anyone to attrition, bar failure, or unemployment, because every bad outcome made the next recruiting cycle harder. So the school invested in making sure its students succeeded, and those investments produced the outcomes that attracted the next class. Call it the survival loop. Here's what it looked like from Maya's seat. On day 2 of orientation, before classes started, she sat through what Westfield called an academic assessment. It was a diagnostic. The school evaluated reasoning patterns, writing, study methodology, and by the end of the first week, Maya had been matched with an academic coach who ID'd 2 specific weaknesses in how she structured legal arguments. And it felt like overkill to her, but it wasn't. Every law student was a hit to bar passage rates, employment numbers, the 509 data that next year's applicants would look at to decide whether to enroll. So Maya's success was the school's survival. Their interests were aligned. This was the school's self-defense to keep enrollments coming in. In her 2L year, she enrolled in the AI Integrated Legal Research Clinic, the one Greystone Law had just cut. She got to work with real clients, with real matters, under faculty supervision. She used tools that most practicing attorneys hadn't even touched. She learned where AI hallucinated, where they saved time, where they introduced new risks. 60 hours of supervised practice in the technology reshaping how law firms hired. 2 different schools, 2 different 2Ls, one watching programs disappear, the others being trained in the skills employers were about to pay a premium for. And then there's career placement, where the loop made its biggest difference. Westfield had built a career services office that functioned less like a campus office and more like a recruiting firm. They had dedicated staff maintaining relationships with every mid-size and large firm in the region. Externship programs funneled students into the employers most likely to hire them later. So the introductions were strategic, they were not random. Part of what Maya chose, even though she didn't fully realize it at the time, was a market, not just a school, because the Southeast was growing with regulatory work, corporate expansion, healthcare law. Legal demand in this area was growing faster than local law schools could supply graduates. When employers needed a junior associate, they called Westfield first because its graduates were ready to practice, and they stayed. When Maya interviewed at a firm her 3L fall, the hiring partner already knew Westfield's program. He'd hired 3 graduates from the previous class. Maya walked him through a clinic project where she'd used AI to compress a research task by 60%, and she showed him the 2 tools she had used to catch issues the AI had missed on manual review. She got an offer by the end of the week, then 2 more offers in the next month. And so employers were actually requesting graduates from Westfield. The partners told Career Services, send us whoever you sent us last year. James applied to 32 positions across 3 different cities. He heard back from 9 of them, interviewed at 4, got 1 offer at a small firm in a city he'd never planned to live in, at a salary that made his loan payments feel like a second rent. Rankings are national, but hiring is local. Maya chose a market, James chose a law school based only on prestige. And so Greystone Law announced it was closing in 2029 with a 2-year teach out for remaining students. James had seen it coming. He had transferred out before the announcement, but transferring meant he lost his scholarship. The new law school took him, but didn't offer him any money. Every dollar of debt he carries traces back to a single decision. And the 3 numbers he never checked, but they'd always been available in those 509 reports if only he thought to look. Now, there was another student at Greystone, a guy who had moved his family across the country for a full tuition scholarship. He said, "They recruited me. They told me this school was on solid footing, that the new building was a sign of commitment to the future. But that new building is the thing that killed them." And he was one of the students who couldn't transfer cleanly. Some schools would not accept his credits. He graduated a semester late, carrying $80,000 in debt he had never planned for. Meanwhile, Westfield was absorbing transfer students from schools like Greystone. They had stable finances, more capacity, bridge scholarships, and so they grew while the others shrank. Between 2026 and 2030, Westfield climbed 9 spots in the rankings because their metrics were measuring real things, and those real things were improving. Maya's degree, the one she had almost turned down, was from a school that was still climbing, and the asset of her degree was appreciating every year. Now, I want to go back in time to the moment that separated Maya and James, because it wasn't a complicated moment. They had applied to law school the same fall with similar numbers. Both had a 164 LSAT and a GPA around 3.5. Both of them got offers from a cluster of schools. Both of them sat down with acceptance letters in front of them, trying to figure out where to go. James chose Greystone. They had a new building, he recognized the name, they gave him a half scholarship, and that made him feel like the school believed in him. He didn't negotiate because nobody told him it was an option. He didn't check employment outcomes because he assumed ranking was a reliable proxy. He chose the school because it looked like a good school. Now, Maya had similar offers. One of them from a school ranked higher than Westfield with a half scholarship. Basically, the same deal James took. And then she got this unusual offer from Westfield, a full ride plus a $5,000 living stipend. And so the stipend at first kind of confused her because it felt like the school was desperate. And she was right, the school was desperate. But before she said no, she asked them one question she read about on a forum. She asked, what percentage of graduates are employed in full-time legal jobs 10 months after graduation? The higher ranked school answered 78%, but Westfield answered 91%. Then she asked them a second question. What is your bar passage rate? The higher ranked school said 82%, but Westfield said 93%. Then she did the math most 22-year-olds don't think to do. The school that cost nothing had better outcomes on every metric that actually mattered for her career. The school that cost $120,000 had a nicer building. So she picked Westfield. It was the hardest offer to accept because it didn't look right. It didn't feel prestigious. Her parents were confused, and a friend told her she was making a mistake. But she wasn't. 2 students, same credentials, same year. One asked 2 questions, the other didn't. And that's the gap that we want to close. We want to make sure that you have the information before the moment passes. Now, of course, that's 2030. But you're not watching this in 2030. You're watching this right now in 2026. And everything I just described is already in motion. The demographic cliff is here. The lending caps are live, and schools are discounting harder than ever. Construction debt from the boom years is sitting on balance sheets with covenants that haven't even been tested yet. Some law schools are going to close in the next 5 years. The forces against them are too strong, and too many schools are overextended. The survival loop is also running right now at schools you've probably never even considered. Those schools are offering more scholarship money than at any point in their history because they're fighting to become what they need to become. The programs are being built, the career pipelines are being laid, and the money is on the table. But from the outside, the schools that are adapting and the schools that are dying look almost identical. Both are discounting hard, both are marketing aggressively. Both will give you a campus tour and a handshake from the dean. The difference is underneath the surface. Now, if you're holding an acceptance letter right now from a school you chose because of its name, its building, or its ranking, and you haven't checked those three numbers, you're going to make the same bet that James made. That doesn't mean your school's a Greystone. It means you don't know yet, and not knowing is the risk. And so here is where you want to look. You want to look at debt. The university financial statements, public for profit, private nonprofits, they disclose their long-term bond obligations. If the school built or renovated in the last 10 years, there is almost certainly debt with covenants, meaning contracts, tied to enrollment or revenue. And that is a red flag worth understanding. The second number is the discount rate. Look at the ABA 509 disclosures. You're looking for percentage of students receiving grants and the median grant amount. If you can cross-reference that with the sticker price tuition, you can estimate the effective discount rate. So say, for example, a school charges $50,000 a year. The 509 data shows 85% of students are getting grants averaging $30,000. That means the school's getting, on average, about $20,000 per student. Then look at last year's data. If that number was $25,000, the school is discounting $5,000 harder per seat per year just to fill the class. And that's the trend that tells you whether the school has room to maneuver or whether it's running out of money. If a school is giving significant money to more than 80% of its class, it is fighting hard. It's not automatically bad because, for example, Westfield was fighting hard too. The question is whether the school is fighting based on strategy or desperation. Then you look at full pay percentage, and also in the 509 data. The share of students paying close to sticker price and the year-over-year trend. A school that is rapidly losing its full pay cohort is losing the students who fund everybody else. That is the most lethal number. And the leading indicator that ties all three together is the employment outcomes, the bar passage rates, full-time legal employment 10 months out. Schools with worse outcomes lose applicants first when the market tightens, and that is what triggers everything else. So on admitted students day, if you go, you want to ask, what is your school's tuition dependence? Have you taken on new debt in the last 10 years? What happens to my financial aid if enrollment drops? If the school answers you clearly, it's worth your time. But if they deflect, if they hedge, if they refuse, if they're vague, that tells you everything you need to know. And when a school ranked lower than you expected offers you more money than you expected, ask why. It may not be a red flag. It might be a school in the survival loop, investing in outcomes and willing to bet on students who are going to be part of them climbing up the rankings. And that might be the best deal you could get, but you've got to recognize it. Now, in this scenario, 22 law schools closed between 2027 and 2030. Every one of them was still enrolling students the year before the end, still taking tuition checks, still accepting new students, promising a future they could not deliver. Now, the students who enrolled at those schools didn't fail. It's the institutions that failed them. But the students who avoided them didn't get lucky. They asked the questions, they checked the numbers, they did their research. And if you would like my help getting the highest possible LSAT score, getting into a better negotiating position to get more scholarship money, to get into better schools, that is the number one needle mover in your application process. The LSAT weighs more heavily than your GPA, than your application essays.